This video is in part because of one unique conversation I had with one guy once when I was in China. I met a construction worker, and keep in mind, this is the 21st century. A lot of guys working construction earn a good living. There's a time when that was like a stereotypical kind of low-wage job. And he asked me what type of work I've been doing back then. So this is years and years and years ago. This is before I got married and before I got divorced and before I had a kid. This is ages ago in China, not like 2 weeks ago in China or something, right? And this guy asked me a question nobody had ever asked me before. He said, in those lines of work that you've been involved in, what I've been discussing, so in museum work, in being involved in academia and going to academic conferences, and these things I've been doing, things I've been discussing with him, he said, how do you approach and how do you start relationships with women you meet in those lines of work? And he was actually speaking from some experience. He had some experience at that time lately, approaching and talking to people. He said, how do you get together? And I remember, my completely spontaneous answer at the time. I'd given it no thought. Nobody ever asked me. I didn't think anyone would ask me that. I said, honestly, I think the main trick, it's not what you say. It's actually listening to them. And I said, most of those women, because he was asking me about the fields I've been working in and so on. I said, there were women in the museum field, and they were in a line of work where it was like, okay, well, this is our 10-year plan to do this research on these teapots. And the most rare thing for them was having someone who was even willing to listen. Whether at the workplace or in their family life or in their dating life, or even if they're already in a relationship with their boyfriend or whatever, they're surrounded by people who do not want to hear them talk about, restoration work on those teapots. So that was the first time that ever occurred to me. And then the other thing is, you and I have done some kind of critique and response videos to the world of dating advice that exists on the internet. Stuff like Based Zeus. And a lot of that stuff, there's this sort of unstated assumption about the type of woman you're hitting on, right? So this is a real example. I remember Based Zeus says this at one point. He talks about just walking up to a woman at the gym and hitting on her by saying, like, hey, do you like to play badminton? Oh, no? Okay, then how about volleyball? And then you go, oh. No, like, okay, in Western culture, I don't know, is this Los Angeles? Is this, London, England? Even that's a big difference, right? London, England versus Los Angeles. What kind of woman, plausibly or actually, would meet a complete stranger in the gym and then just go play volleyball with him with nothing else in common in the 21st century? You don't know each other on Facebook. You never met before. You have no common interests. Because, like, in my opinion, to even go and play volleyball or something with a coworker, like a guy you know from work, that's not that spontaneous or lighthearted a decision for most women, for most intelligent, just women of any description. You know what I mean? I'm not saying there are zero women out there who would do that. This kind of like lighthearted, spontaneous thing. Like, oh, I just met this guy at the gym and decided to go play badminton with him, and then went out for drinks and then slept with him. Like, that's actually like the fable Based Zeus is trying to sell you, is that this is going to happen if you follow his advice and instructions.
Yeah.
And like part of my response to that is, okay, think through what kind of woman is that going to happen with? Because if you try it 100 times at the gym, maybe one time out of 100 it'll work. If you walk up on 100 different women and say, hey, want to play badminton, and then you manage to parlay playing badminton into date night, into, the hotel motel all day. And this is filmed right now in the hotel room, by the way. In case you didn't know. And it's going great. I think it's going to work out. I think later tonight I'm going to get lucky. No, this is a committed relationship that's been going for 1,000,000 years. But we're in a hotel room nevertheless. But if you just think through what kind of woman is that plausible with, what kind of woman is that good advice? And then I also flip it around and I challenge the guys and say, no, for what kind of guy is that good advice? What kind of man are you if you're the man who follows that advice and does this 100 times? And whether you get good results or bad results, this is your path. This is how you're living your life. I think there's some hard questions there that may lead to some interesting answers. And so I think the kind of unasked and unanswered side of the equation is, how do you meet intelligent women? How do you, frankly, hit on intelligent women? How do you strike up conversation with or start a relationship with intelligent women? How do you seduce intelligent women, if you want to put it that way? How do you start dating them? and then how do you sustain the relationship? And like obviously you could write a book on that. You could write a lot of things about that. But first and foremost, I got to put in the disclaimer. I've met intelligent women with no formal education and with no professional accomplishments, right? Like intelligence here, I shouldn't be confused with highly educated and shouldn't be confused with highly accomplished. And of course, one of the reasons why you meet women who are very intelligent but don't have education or accomplishments is because education costs money and access to opportunity to be highly accomplished also, above all else, reflects how much wealth they have in their family or for them personally or what have you. But I have met women who are highly intelligent. I think this advice would apply to them. So, this is a pretty short video. I think I could write a book on this. It'd probably be better if I talked to other guys who really, if you interviewed other guys with this kind of experience. I'll talk about my own bias, I guess, later on in the video. Because I do have a weird sort of bias in dealing with this topic. And my bias is that most of the intelligent women I meet, I'm not interested in. I don't want to pursue a relationship with them. So it's really not like I have the experience of hitting on tons of these women. A lot of the time I was the one rejecting the woman or whatever coming out of the interactions. That brings a strange kind of bias to bear on it. But for me, I think one of the most outstanding facts about intelligent women as such, intelligent women, whether they think of themselves as an intellectual or not, whether they're highly educated or not, whether they're highly accomplished or not, because you can meet a highly intelligent woman, and let's say she reads books and cares about the world and has some kind of engagement on some topic, but she may be working as a waitress. You can also meet a woman who's highly intelligent but works in the pure sciences and doesn't read any books and doesn't know anything about the outside world. That's especially hard to handle, but someone who's highly intelligent but lives in a kind of self-selected ignorance, not my type, but it's out there. I think one of the main things they're burdened with, and this relates back to my first anecdote, is the sense of being unappreciated and of looking for that appreciation from the men in their lives that they may not get from their own family, that they may not get from their own coworkers, that they may not get from their current boyfriend they're currently with, like if they're already in a relationship, and that they probably don't get from their female friends and colleagues and so on. Now, why is that so important? If you think of a stereotypical aspiring poet, male or female, but I think the struggle is much harder for a woman in our society, in every society I know of, whether it's China or Canada, frankly. If you think of someone who wants to be a poet or wants to be thought of as a poet, even if it's just a hobby, one aspect of that is the tendency to try to seek out other people who are poets or other people who can appreciate poetry, who are reading the same poetry they're reading, who are going to respond to their work or respond to their aspirations or respond to the same books they're reading, and it's going to affirm their sense of identity as a poet, or at least as someone who's interested in poetry, someone who's a serious amateur, put it that way, right? And you can take that framework and delete the word poetry and replace it with almost any form of special interest an intelligent person might have. And most really intelligent people have at least 5 or 6 things that they care about. And none of them are going to be video games unless they're actually in the video game industry making video games, just to be blunt. It's not going to be something that passive, right? So, if you guys watch my channel, I have a whole bunch of special interests. And no doubt, that's exactly, if a woman were trying to seduce me, that'd be the way to do it, would be a woman would approach me, and what she'd have in common with me was First Nations languages. This is someone who did research on Korean, Ojibwe, or Mohawk or something. If someone walks up to me in the car and says, "Oh, hey, I know you have this interest. This is what I've been doing lately, too. I have this interest in ecology." That can be common ground that you work on or what have you. But, look, the reason why I say I think the struggle is a lot harder for women in every society I've known. It's real easy for me as a 6'3", white male to put on a suit, and also I don't have a stutter. I'm a well-spoken, imposing male. I can put on a suit and show up at any conference anywhere in the world and be taken seriously. I could probably do that at a conference on theoretical physics, something I'm not a specialist in at all. But it's probably, I get it, people would just treat me as an expert because I'm big, I have a deep voice, I talk in a confident way, and I could act like an expert. People be like, "Oh, okay, what field of physics are you in?" It's real easy for me to front, But on the other hand, we're taught, like it was theoretical physics, but in all kinds of fields, I do have some expertise and I do have some passion. I'm normally not fronting. I throw up at I throw up at events. No, I show up at events. I try not to throw up at events. I show up at events, again, whether it's related to languages I've studied or history or politics or whatever the topic is. And it's whether I'm delivering a paper or even though I'm just in the audience, it's really easy for me to be taken seriously and really easy for me to get that recognition. And for a lot of women, it's not. For a lot of women, they're laughed at and sneered at. You can relate to this. They're laughed at and sneered at by their own parents. Their whole lives. I think in England that's worse than it is in Northern. So do you still study poetry? So you still study English literature? So you're making any money out of that university degree you've got in English literature? Or, a lot of women are ridiculed this way about the things they're really passionate, they really care about. And maybe it is some language they study or, whatever it is. A lot of intelligent women, whether it's the family or the workplace or the romantic life, and remember, they may be swept off their feet by a great guy. Let's say an intelligent woman. That's the other thing. Most intelligent women are very, very good at seducing the men they want. That's something about intelligent women. I think it's true almost across the board. However, a lot of intelligent women will have the experience either of seducing a guy, and he may be a great guy in many, many ways, or of being seduced by a guy, and he may be a great guy in many, many ways, but he has absolutely zero appreciation for those things that matter to her in life, whether it's poetry or 12th century teapots or languages or politics or science, whatever it is she really cares about. So she has a relationship that in some ways is great, but gnawing away at her is this sense of her identity, as an intellectual and so on. And that's probably the number one warning when you get past the meeting and dating stage with intelligent women. I think intelligent women are the easiest to seduce when they already have a boyfriend or if they're already married. It's the easiest for them to make that break because a lot of them, consciously or unconsciously, want that affirmation of their sense of identity as an intellectual, as a poet, as whatever the case, as a scientist, as someone who cares seriously about the serious science, whatever the case may be. And if they don't feel they're getting that from the boyfriend or the husband they already have, they're going to really respond to it as soon as it appears to them, coming from another man. So yeah, I have my own bias in this, and my bias is that unlike these supposed pickup artists, from my perspective, the ultimate game is no game. When I meet women and talk to women, I don't lie about a goddamn thing. And including the fact that I don't pretend to be interested when I'm not interested, right? So, the bias I bring this, and the vast majority of intelligent women I've met, I've only wanted to know them as colleagues. I haven't wanted a romantic relationship with them. And then that can create an awkward dynamic if they are romantically interested in me and I'm not interested in them. So, there are all kinds of scenarios I've played. That's, just how I've lived my life. And obviously most guys with these channels, they're trying to get huge numbers. They're trying to get a big diversity of experience. And they don't have the kind of biased perspective on these things that I do. I don't get it, in a sense. I don't get how it is that so many men think they can, sleep with women they have contempt for, and in the end, after a pretty short period of time, not end up feeling contempt for themselves. And when you think about it, you can just replace the word sleep with just associate with, just the company you keep. But it's so much more than that. Whether you really love somebody or you just pretend to love somebody, the intimate relations in our lives, with the few hours of our day that are not dominated by earning money and spending money, it's so meaningful and so important that you spend that with somebody whom you respect and where their respect for you matters and is meaningful, that I really profoundly can't appreciate or relate to the base Zeus, PUA, perspective on the world. And then the flip side of that is that I can relate to the men who are out there, even if they're a tiny minority of men, who are really interested in pursuing intelligent women. And I can also, I think, really sympathize with this mechanic I'm describing, which is that intelligent women are out there, and whether they're conscious of it or not, the main quality they're looking for in a man is, in effect, a man who will listen to them in a way that makes the intelligent woman aware of her own intelligence, that confirms her sense of herself, affirms her sense of identity as an intelligent woman, as an intellectual, as a poet, as a painter, as a scientist, whatever it may be. And that is a mode of listening that I think no pickup artist is going to teach you and no PhD program is going to teach you, but that we as men can really work on, and maybe it's going to have positive benefits in our personal lives, in our work lives, and beyond.